Hello, everyone. In today's session, we'll be discussing the most frequently asked question type, which is inference. Now, inference questions span sections. We get inference questions in English, we get inference questions in logical reasoning, and we get inference questions in legal reasoning. And quite oddly, we also get sometimes inference questions in GK. I remember in GK, CLAT 2024, 2025 had some questions which were, the answers to these questions were getting derived from the passage, right? But for sure, that may have been, one off, but you will get inference questions across sections, English, reasoning, legal reasoning, and logical reasoning, right? Now, these inference questions can come in various forms and shapes, and this we have discussed in one of our previous inference sessions. In fact, on this video, I'll link the previous inference session that we did, which was very theory oriented. We spent a lot of time understanding inference and we solved some questions. It was more of a theory class, right? I'll just post the link of the previous inference session that we did. But today's inference session would be very practice oriented. We'll spend some time on understanding how to go about these questions, right? But it will be very practice oriented. I aim to solve at least 10 inference questions in today's session, right? So as I was saying, the inference questions are asked in various forms and shapes. In reading comprehension, they can come up as central idea question. Inference is anything that follows from the passage, right? So central idea followed from the passage. So central idea question is an inference question. Primary purpose question, we get the answer from the passage. It's an inference question. Tone question is also an inference question because we arrive at the tone of the passage based on how we have interpreted the passage, based on how the information has been conveyed in that passage, right? Logical reasoning, of course, you get these inference questions in the critical reasoning passages. Author would agree with what the passage supports, which one of the following. And then, of course, in legal reasoning, in the past 2 to 3 years, 24, CLAT 24, CLAT 25, and even CLAT 26, right? Legal reasoning section also has taken shape of critical reasoning. Of course, the passages themselves have legal articles, right? Some legal case is being discussed, some principle is laid out, but you get a lot of inference questions, direct inference questions on the passage. Of course, also principle fact questions wherein you have to apply the principle given in the passage on a set of facts. That also is essentially an inference question. You know the principle from the passage, you're just applying to this situation, right? So that in itself is an inference question. And then critical reasoning also, the method of reasoning questions, the flaw in the reasoning questions, all those are inference questions. So as I said, it is the most frequently asked question type. In today's session, we'll focus our discussion, we'll keep it restricted to direct inference, which one of the following gets inferred, which one of the following the author would agree, the passage supports which one of the following, right? So we are just dealing with those inference questions and not these, let's say, special inference questions like principal fact, method of reasoning, primary purpose, tone. These are not the questions that we are going to discuss today, but we will have a session on primary purpose, method of reasoning, separate session. As I said, we are only doing, inference in its simplest form in this particular session, right? And if we get enough good responses to this video, right, through chat or through comments, we will take up, some of the legal reasoning passages and we'll discuss inference questions from them. And, we'll be solving them in a way that, let's say we have some sense of the legal principle, but we haven't done legal principle, we haven't mastered it, right? Despite not having mastered the legal principle, with some sense, we are solving those inference questions in legal reasoning passages as if we were solving them for reading comprehension or logical reasoning. We will also do that. But currently, As I said, we are just doing inference in its simplest form, right? Now, the rules, and then we move on to the questions. Firstly, the passage is your entire universe. All inference questions, any answer to any inference questions will be based on what I know from the passage. I don't want outside knowledge to come in the way. I may know many more things about this topic, but that will not sort of come in the way while I'm answering these inference questions. I'm only as it's written, right? The universe that I'm working with is just this passage, nothing beyond this, right? Ignore any commonsensical. This option looks commonsensical in the real world. This looks reasonable, right? Sometimes we go for an option that looks reasonable. We aren't doing any of it. We are just looking at the passage just like a robot, not even artificial intelligence, just like a robot. We are just looking at the passage, checking whether this answer gets support from the passage, from which part, from which statement, from which paragraph, and we are marking it. Unless that happens, unless there is evidence for the for that option, we are not marking it, right? So no personal opinions, no personal assumptions, no common sense, no outside knowledge, just the passage. Okay. And as we do with most of the reading comprehension, critical reasoning questions, the best approach will be elimination. We are eliminating the wrong ones out. Whatever is left is correct. This is a very Sherlock Holmes approach, right? You know, anything that's not getting proved from the passage, anything that is not provable from the text in the passage is out. What kind of options will be those? Firstly, could be true options. Could be true options are incorrect. Why they are incorrect? I look at this statement, I tell myself, yeah, this looks reasonable. This might just follow. This might just be, in line with what the author is arguing, right? But if we do not have a definite support from the passage, if we can't cite a statement, a certain statement or an idea or two statements or combination of statements for this option, we are not marking it, right? Even if it is a possibility from the passage, we are not marking it. So that's incorrect. Exaggeration, we understand. Exaggeration from some to most. Passage, in the passage, we are given something like X sometimes leads to Y. Option says X usually leads to Y. That will be an exaggeration. From sometimes to usually will be an exaggeration. That option is out. Or something like some and most, right? It will affect some people. It will affect most people. The option says that option is an exaggerated one. That is out, right? So exaggeration is out. Something that is only a possibility is out, right? And then new information, something not really discussed. Now, new information won't be very far away from the passage. It won't be the case that the passage is on India's economic situation, and this option is talking about Shah Rukh Khan's latest movie, right? That's not going to be the case. But yes, new information option will be something very close to the topic at hand, something very close to what is being discussed, but this exact thing is not discussed. So this is out. This becomes new information. And as we'll solve questions, we'll just highlight some options that contain new information. So new information is out, possibility option is out, and exaggerated option is out. Whatever is left is correct. So pay sort of close attention to the certainty level of some of the statements. Has the author used all, or has the author used most? All, only, never, must, requires, always imply 100% type of certainty. Most generally, and remember this, most generally, usually, tends to, probably, right? They have, just a second. Yeah, they have the likelihood is greater than 50%. The chances of it happening are greater than 50%. Words like probably is not 50-50. It's greater than 50%. Probably, most, generally, usually, right? So pay close attention to how the author has framed his opinion or her opinion, right? Existences, Some, it is greater than or equal to 1, right? This is minimum 1. Some, may, it may happen 50-50, might, often. Often is also very close to sometimes. Often is not usually, right? So remember these words. Often is not usually, often is sometimes, right? Usually is the chances are greater than 50%. All right. Uh, what does the correct answer look like? We just discussed the incorrect answers, new information, exaggeration, just a possibility. The correct answer will be, in many cases, maybe in most cases, just repeat of an idea, right? Repeat of an idea would mean it's just combining two ideas and then sort of an option is created, just combining the two ideas given in a passage, or it could just be a paraphrase of a given statement. So don't hesitate marking an option that you think, यार ये तो अभी discuss हुआ है, यार this is very clearly stated in the passage. That should become a reason to pick this option, right? Because sometimes we are doing these inference questions and we look at an option, we think to ourselves, oh my god, this is this is almost mentioned in the passage. That's okay. That's okay, because inference, in many cases, the answers will just be repeat of information. Read my lips. It will be a paraphrase. Paraphrase, the same idea using a different combination of words. The same idea. So that will be correct. Or it could be, in a more typical inference question, it would be a deduction. Deduction by combining two ideas in the two or more ideas in the passage. We will look at both these kind of correct options. Okay. So what I also tell people is, firstly, as I had said, when I'm marking an option, if you want to confirm this, right, that whether I've picked the correct option or not, just check. If somebody were to ask you, why is this a correct option? You should be able to cite it in the passage. You know, boss, from these 2 lines, I'm getting this answer. Or from these 4 lines, I'm getting this answer. Right? That's the correct option. And the correct option, as I had said, right, is just a boring idea. Why is it boring? It's just repeat of an idea. It's already there in the passage. We aren't looking for anything fancy, right? These are not those questions. We are just looking for something boring, something that we have already seen in the passage, right? So that's the correct option. Okay. Now, without much ado, we go on to the questions. We solve some questions together. Before that, keep a notebook and a pen handy, right? Because I'm just giving you a heads up. There may be some passages that are longer, right? And you may have to read a passage and you will have to solve the question that comes on the next slide. So maybe you would want to take some notes from the passage, right? Solve it, right? While the question is there, I'll give you some time to solve it. If you are not able to completely solve it in that stipulated time, when you are rewatching the video, right, pause on that question, solve it on your own, and then resume the video, right? And so just treat this session as a classroom session on inference practice, right? Okay, let's start with this one, and keep letting me know the answers that you pick on every question. The first one. Okay, let's do it together. A number of measures indicate the viability of a nation's economy. Number of measures, it says. The level and rate of growth of aggregate output are the most significant indicators. Level and rate of growth, right? So these are the most significant indicators, right? But unemployment and inflation rates are also important. Further, Switzerland, Austria, Israel, Ireland, Denmark, and Finland all have viable economics, but none has a very large population. Okay. Switzerland and Austria each have populations of about 7 million, Switzerland and Austria. The other populations are at least one fourth smaller. So the countries with the out of the given countries, the ones with the maximum population are Switzerland and Austria, 7 million. The others have at least one fourth smaller, right? So we are given a set of facts, and that's it. There is no argument here, just a set of facts, and we have to infer. And just look at this question stem, everyone. Which one of the following is most strongly supported by the information above? Don't take it for a strengthened question. It is not a strengthened question. Not a strengthened question. Just read the question stem very carefully. Which one of the following is most strongly supported by the information above? So the option is getting the support from the passage. The passage is providing support to the option. So it's an inference question. Option getting the support from the passage is an inference question. Option providing support to the passage is a strengthened question. Remember this. Now let's look at the options. A says a nation's economic viability is independent of the size of its population. Do we know this from the passage? And I'm looking at this option and I'm saying, I don't know. There's a question mark. I don't know whether it is independent of the size of population. I don't know because it's not really given. So if there is a question mark, the answer is, the option is incorrect. B, having a population larger than 7 million ensures that a nation will be economically viable. Any such idea given in the passage? Population larger than 7 million, then a nation will be economically viable. Again, I don't know. I don't know from the passage. Out. Economic viability does not require a population of at least 7 million. Yes, because I have examples of Ireland, Denmark, Finland. These are one fourth smaller, right? So it's guaranteed that economic viability does not require a population of at least 7 million. We have examples in the paragraph. C is correct, completely supported by the passage. D, a nation's population is the most significant contributor to the level and rate of growth of aggregate output. Really? Not discussed. All of this is new information. Out. A, B, D, new information. Out. Option C is correct. Okay, let's do the next one. Keep giving me the answers in the live chat. Okay, let's do this. So most antidepressant drugs cause weight gain. Most of them. Not all of them, but most of them. So I'm being mindful of the quantifier being used. Cause weight gain. Okay. While dieting can help reduce the amount of weight gained while taking such antidepressants, some weight gain is unlikely to be preventable. Or, in other words, some weight gain will definitely happen. It is inevitable, right? That some weight gain is unlikely to be preventable. So, some weight gain will happen. The information above, again, look at the question stem. The information above most strongly supports which one of the following? And again, not a strength in question. This information is supporting which option? Inference question. A physician should not prescribe any antidepressant drug for a patient if that patient is overweight. Should not. It looks like a viewpoint statement. It is a viewpoint statement. Has such a viewpoint been expressed in the passage? No, this is out. However reasonable it might look to us, right? Yeah, it looks very reasonable. Doesn't matter. Does it get support from the passage? No, it is out. B, people who are trying to lose weight should not ask their doctors for an antidepressant depressant drug. Should not ask. Again, has such an opinion, viewpoint expressed? Nope, this is out. At least some patients taking antidepressant drugs gain weight as a result of taking them. What about C? Yes, of course, some weight gain will happen. C is good. D, all patients taking antidepressant drugs should diet to maintain their weight. Should. No such opinion has been expressed. D is out. Option C is the clear winner. Right? Okay, let's do the next one. Okay, let's do it now. So it says, for democracy to survive, it is imperative that the average citizen be able to develop informed opinions about important policy issues. It is imperative. Imperative is very close to essential or necessary. It is necessary that the average citizen be able to develop informed opinions about important policy issues. In today's society, this means that citizens must be able, again, must implies necessity, right? Must be able to develop informed opinions on many scientific subjects. So, firstly, average citizen must be able to develop informed opinions about important policy issues, and then citizens must be able to develop informed opinions on many scientific subjects, from ecosystems to defense system. Yet, always an important word, yet, but, however, as scientific knowledge advances, the average citizen is increasingly unable to absorb enough information to develop informed opinions. So the average citizen is not able, is unable to develop informed opinions on many important issues. He's unable. If he's unable, it will become difficult for him to develop such informed opinions about important policy issues, right? And therefore, it will become difficult for democracy to survive, right? All of this is connected, right? Democracy to survive, average citizen must be able to develop informed opinions, right? And if he's not able to do this, right? So if he's not able to do this, he will not be that it will be difficult for democracy to survive, right? That's what the message is. Of the following, which one logically follows from the passage? A says, scientists have a duty to educate the public. Really? Is this supported? No, this is out. The survival of democracy is threatened by the advance of scientific knowledge. Yes, because scientific knowledge, right? Informed opinion making, informed opinion, unable. So democracy to survive, difficult, right? So survival of democracy is threatened by the advance of scientific knowledge. Looks very good. C says every citizen has a duty to and can become scientifically literate. Has a duty. Does this get support from the passage? Nope. Can become scientifically literate? We don't know. So C is out. D. Democracy will survive if there are at least some citizens who are capable of developing informed opinions on important scientific issues. Now, D is little interesting. D looks like a very good option. But the problem with D is this word if. How is this a problem? It says if there are some citizens who are capable of developing informed opinions, democracy will survive. Now, just look at the first line. For democracy to survive, it is necessary that average citizen be able to develop informed opinions. So it is necessary if implies sufficiency. So we don't know if it is sufficient. We know it is necessary. So it reverses, right? So option D is incorrect. It is incorrect also for some other reason, which is the use of this phrase some citizens. Now, some citizens may not be the same as average citizen, right? So some citizens is we can't equate some citizens to average citizen, right? So that is also a problem. But the bigger problem is it is making this thing, developing informed opinions, a sufficient condition, whereas in the paragraph, in the argument, the first line tells us that it is necessary. So D is out. Option B is correct here. Again, in regard to C, that has every citizen has a duty, it's not getting inferred. All right. Option B is correct here. Okay. Let's do the next one now. All right. Let's do this. It is even more important that we criticize democracies that have committed human rights violations. We criticize democracies than that we criticize dictatorships that have committed more violent crimes. So just look at this. More violent human rights offenses. Who has committed more violent human rights offenses? Dictatorships. But who should we criticize more? We should criticize more the democracies, right? So just understand this information given, right? Dictatorships have committed more violent human rights violations or more violent human rights offenses, but it is the democracies that we should criticize more, right? Human rights violations are always inexcusable, but those committed by governments that represent the will of the people, which is democracy, are even more reprehensible. uh, Reprehensible would mean we should, criticize them more, right? They should be criticized more, are even more reprehensible than those committed by dictators. Further, our criticism is more likely to have an effect on the former would mean democracy, than on the latter. So if you criticize democracy for human rights violations, right, uh, it will have, it is likely to have, more likely to have an effect, right? If you're criticizing a democracy because it is a government that represents the will of the people, the chances are greater that it will have some effect than when you are criticizing a dictatorship, right? Which is like a one-way street. So what is the inference? Just look at A. All governments commit some inexcusable and reprehensible acts. All. Do we have support for this? This might just look very tempting, right? Because the author is saying, the author implies that even in democracies, there are human rights violations. Dictatorships mein to hai, but even in democracies. But does that, from that, can I infer that all governments commit reprehensible acts? No, this is an exaggeration, A is out. Some human rights violations are more reprehensible than other more violent human rights violations. And that's correct, right? Human rights violations, some human rights violations, which ones? The ones committed in democracy, right? Are more reprehensible than other more violent. More violent would be those committed in dictatorships. So the ones committed, even though they are less violent, the ones committed in democracies are more reprehensible than the ones committed in a dictatorship. B is very good. C says criticism of human rights violations is certain to have an effect on a dictatorship. Dictatorship? No, more likely to have an effect on the former, which is democracy. C is out. Certain is also an exaggeration. D says human rights violations are more likely to occur in democracies than in dictatorships. Again, we don't have support for this. Where they are more likely to happen, we don't know. But if they are happening in a democracy, they should be criticized more. It is more important to criticize them than to criticize violations happening in a dictatorship. Right? So B is the only statement that gets inferred from the passage. Everything else is either new information or exaggeration. Okay. So keep sending me your answers. Okay. Just solve along with me. Solve these questions. This will, you can treat this as an inference drill for the day. Next. Okay. Let me know your answers here. And before we start discussing this, we'll very quickly go back to the fourth one because Trupti is saying uh, fourth should be D. So let's look at D. Human rights violations are more likely to occur in democracies, than in dictatorships. Do we know this from the passage where they are more likely to occur? They should be put to greater scrutiny. They should be it should be more important to criticize them. But nowhere in the passage it's given human rights violations are more likely to occur in democracies. So D does not get the support, so D is not correct. Okay. Now, coming to this one. Okay. We're getting some C's here. Let's see. A study revealed that although most adults estimated their diets to correspond closely with the recommendations of standard nutritional guidelines, and this is the operative part, I think most of their diets did not come close to those recommendations. Right? Both women and men underestimated the amount of fat in their diets, underestimated the fat, right? So maybe they are saying that I'm eating, 10 units of fat, right? But they're actually eating 20. Okay, so underestimated the amount of fat in their diets and overestimated their intake of most other foods. In most food categories, especially fruits and vegetables, women's diets did not meet the recommendation. Okay, in most food categories. Women's diets did not meet the recommendations. Men underestimated their fat intake, and we understand this, underestimated their fat intake. They are consuming 20 units of fat, and they are saying they are consuming 10 units, right? So they are underestimating. And all and though they met the recommendation for breads, they fell short in all other categories. In all other categories, in any category, they fell short, right? Let's look at the options. Again, look at the question stem. Which one of the following is most strongly supported by the information above? Clearly an inference question, not a strengthened question. The option is getting support, right? A says both men and women in the study misjudged their compliance with the nutritional guidelines in every food category. That's not getting the support, right? For example, men met the recommendation for breads, right? So this becomes an easy choice to eliminate, right? B says in the study, more men than women were aware that in some food categories that their diet failed to reflect the recommendations closely. Now, just look at this phrasing here. More men than women were aware that they have failed, that their diet has failed to reflect the recommendations closely. Nothing of this sort is discussed, right? Who was more aware? Do we know who was more aware that their diets have failed to reflect the recommendations? We don't know that, right? So B is out. So it might look very close to what is being discussed, but still we don't know this from the passage. So this has to be eliminated. C. Men in the study estimated their daily intake of fruits and vegetables to be significantly lower than it in fact was. So just look at this statement once again, right? Okay. Men in the study estimated their daily intake of fruits and vegetables to be significantly lower, right? And just look at this. In regard to men, what was given? Just look at this. In most food categories, especially fruits and vegetables, it's in regard to women, right? With in regard to men, the only thing we know is men underestimated their fat intake, but we don't know if they also, right, under or overestimated their intake of fruits and vegetables. They fell short of recommendation that is different from what they estimated it to be. So, in regard to men and their estimation on their intake of fruits and vegetables, we don't know. We don't know. Let's look at D. Most men in the study did not consume the amounts of fruits and vegetables that the nutritional guidelines recommended. Just look at the last line. Men underestimated their fat intake, and though they met the recommendations for breads, they fell short in all other categories. All other will include fruits and vegetables. So they fell short in fruits and vegetable category. So they did not, fell short would mean they did not consume enough fruits and vegetables as per the guidelines. That is what is the meaning. That is what the meaning is of falling short. Option D is absolutely correct. C is out. What do you think, everyone? Let me know in the chat. Let me know your thoughts on this one, because option C and D, right? Because of the phrasing, also because the number of facts in that, in that paragraph, there were enough facts, and not necessarily all the facts were connected to each other. There were fact one, fact two, fact three, fact four. So C and D, choosing between C and D would have become tricky. Tell me. Okay, I'll wait, even if we, because there's some lag between when I'm speaking and when you are receiving this. So even in the chats, there is a lag. So if I see any comment, any chat asking me to clarify any option on this one, I'll do that. But we can continue with the next question, which is this one. Okay. Okay. Which is this one. Now, in this particular passage, for this particular question, we have this passage which is slightly longer than the previous ones. So the information spans 2 paragraphs. Still, it is not a very long passage. What I'll suggest is, when you are reading this passage, right, take some notes if you want, and then we'll go to the question. Right now, when you're solving the question, when I'll take you to the question slide, I can keep doing back and forth for some time, so that you can be very sure of the answer that you have picked. Right. So just firstly, just go through this passage, just retain the main idea, and then we'll go to the question. So we'll move on to the question slide. But as I said, we'll come back to this passage slide after we have read the question. Okay. Uh, so let's just check what the question is asking us. The question is pertaining the second paragraph. It says it can be inferred that the author of the passage would probably agree with which of the following claims about the post referred to in lines at its 1928 convention in the second paragraph, right? So what would the author agree with is the point. So what I'll do is, before looking at the options, so I'm not going through the options immediately. I'll just reread that part. This is how I'll solve. This is how I will usually solve these questions. I'll just reread that part, have some formulation of the correct answer in my mind, and then I'll approach the options. This is how we'll do at least the difficult inference questions. Okay. So we will go back to the passage and the second paragraph specifically, wherein it says, in contrast to scientific managers, Henry Ford claimed that shorter hours led to greater productivity and profits. Shorter hours would mean, let's say, instead of working 50 hours a week, work 40 hours a week, right? 40 hours per week. So shorter hours led to greater productivity and profits. However, few employers, let's say companies, matched either Ford's vision or his specific interest in mass marketing a product, automobiles, that required leisure for its use. And what does this mean? What this means is, Ford was probably the only car manufacturer of the time. So Ford is the only company that is making cars, automobiles, right? So the other employers, right? The other employers do not really understand, right? Do not really understand Ford's vision. And what will be Ford's vision in regard to automobiles? It says required leisure for its use. So if I'm buying a car, and who are the people who are buying these cars? People who are working. So if they are buying a car and they don't have time to actually drive it, will they actually buy a car? Right? That will discourage them, right? If I'm working 50 hours a week, I am not getting enough time to drive my car. Will I invest in a car then? And Ford is in the business of making cars. So Ford understood, and Ford's vision was fewer hours for workers, so that they are actually encouraged to buy a product like a car, which they can use, which they can drive at, when they are free. So only few employers matched either Ford's vision or a specific interest in mass marketing a product, automobiles. And few unions succeeded in securing shorter hours through bargaining. Few means very few, right? Few unions succeeded in securing shorter hours through bargaining. At its 1928 convention, the AFL posted, just look at this word, posted, of approximately 165,000 members working 5-day, 40-hour weeks. So now AFL is boasting, we have these many numbers, 165,000. And that looks quite a number, especially in 1928, that would be a big number, right? These many members are working 40 are doing 40-hour weeks. So they were treating it as an achievement. For a labor union, that's an achievement. We have been able to reduce the number of hours. But, I'll try to change the color, but although this represented an increase of about 75,000, which is quite an increase, especially in those times since 1926. So there is an increase. The number is big enough, is big, looks big, but about 70% of the total came from 5 extremely well organized trade unions. So 70% of this total 165,000, 70% is, let's say, approximately 3/4. It's not 3/4, but let's say 3/4. So 3/4 is coming only from 5 unions. What if there are, hundreds of unions? Let's say there are 100 unions. 75 of this 1,65,000 is coming from just 5 unions, 5%, right? So although the number looks big, and this is the idea, although the number looks big, it's not really spanning unions. It's not really reflective of a widespread adoption of 40-hour weeks. It does not show that 40-hour weeks has become a norm, because these are just 5 trade unions. So the number does not reflect, right, what maybe they are trying to project. The number is misleading in a way, right? So let's look at the options. Let's go to the question, and we should be able to answer this now without going back to the passage. So this boast, right? What I know, what I have understood, right? The number, does not really, may not reflect widespread adoption of 40-hour weeks, right? Now, A says it is based on a mistaken estimation of the number of AFL workers who were allowed to work. Mistaken estimation. No, it just tells us that these are the numbers. It's not an estimate. These are actual numbers. And it is not based, it's not saying it's an estimation, but it is saying it is based on a mistaken estimation. We are not told that it is based on a mistaken estimation. It's just giving us the actual numbers and saying the number may not reflect widespread adoption. Just that. Nothing is said about whether it is based on a mistaken estimation, right? So A is out. B says it could create a mistaken impression, and that looks good, right? It could create a mistaken impression regarding the number of unions obtaining a 5-day, 40-hour week during the 20s. Yes, it could create a mistaken impression that this is widespread, which it is not, because these are just 5 unions out of maybe hundreds. 3/4 of the number are coming from just 5 unions. So B looks good. See, it exaggerates the extent of the increase between 26 and 28. It did not really, it just told us, nothing of this sort is getting inferred, that that increase was an exaggeration. Just that there was an increase of 75,000, just that, which looks impressive, but does not reflect widespread adoption, right? So we don't get it. We don't get enough information from the passage that this increase is an exaggeration. We are just given that was the increase. The author is not treating this as an exaggeration. C is out. D says it overestimates the bargaining prowess of the AFL building trades unions during the 1920s. Again, that boast is not overestimating the bargaining prowess, right? Maybe, let's say if that number was really reflective of widespread adoption, maybe we could have said that, it's because of their bargaining prowess, or maybe because, companies thought that, yeah, giving them 40, there was no real bargaining required. Companies readily complied. But we don't know whether it's because of this bargaining skill of the trades unions, right? So D is also out. Option B is correct in this one. Okay. So this may have been a difficult, but that's what the session is about, right? Solving difficult inference questions. So if you don't get it the first time, what I'll suggest is you just, once we are done with the live video, you watch the video again, come to this exact place, question number 6, and the passage, just do the passage again, do the question again. Also, what we are doing is, I think we are, uh, I don't know if we are uploading the PPT in the description. I'll just see to it if we can do that, and we'll upload the PPT on here only, right here in the description. But read the question if you found it a little confusing. Option B is correct on this one. Okay, let's go to the next one, which is again, I think, based on a slightly longer passage. So there are 2 paragraphs. So what I'll suggest is, again, you can make some notes when you are reading the first part and the second part. So there's this first part of the passage, then there's this next part, but on the same slide we have the question also, right? Uh, and I think since it is not a very long passage, you can retain some information from the first part. Yeah, but let's do this, right? I'll go back to the previous slide if it's required, right, to solve the question. But you attempt first, you go through this part. In some time, I'll move to the next slide for the next part and the question. So I'll just move to the next slide now, everyone. All right. Let's. What we can do here is we can actually just go through the argument and then answer the question together. Okay. So what it tells us is in 1988, services moved ahead of manufacturing as the main product of United States economy. But the question that the passage is trying to answer is, or try to actually analyze, is what is meant by services? That's the big question. So in the first part, it says, first paragraph, some economists define a service as something that is produced and consumed simultaneously. For example, a haircut. So somebody is giving you a haircut and you are receiving it immediately, right? So the production, as in the haircut, and the service is received immediately, right? So that is a service. It is being produced and consumed simultaneously. The broader classical definition of a service is an intangible something that cannot be touched or stored. It cannot be touched or stored. But electrical utilities can store energy and computer programmers save information electronically. What these examples are telling us, for example, providing electricity. Once again, providing electricity is a service, right? But you can also store electricity, right? So you're getting some company is making electricity available at your home. So they are a service company. They are not producing. They are not really producing anything that you can touch and feel. But it is something that you can store, right? For example, solar power, you can store it, right? And you can transfer it back to the grid, right? You can sell it back to the main grid. So it is a service, but it can be stored. And similarly, it says programmers save information. For example, a software, right? Or a software or a program simply. So somebody is giving you a service, right? They are developing some software for you. So they're giving you a service. Software companies are service, they are considered service in the service industry, IT companies, right? But that software obviously can be stored electronically, right? So according to the author, this stored wala part is not really defining, it's not really doing an appropriate job, right? So it says, thus, the classical definition is hard to sustain because we can actually store some things like electricity and programming code. We can store it, right? So the classical definition is hard to sustain, and we are sort of remembering this because the question is on this. Now, second paragraph, the United States government's definition is more practical. So we have a classical definition in first paragraph, right? First paragraph is what? Just telling us the classical definition, and the author's point on it, that it is hard to sustain. The second paragraph gives us the United States government definition. And according to the author, it is more practical. Practical would be, let's say, convenient to use. Why is it convenient to use? It says services are residual category that includes everything that is not agriculture or industry. So first categorization you do, let's say agriculture, right? First categorization. The other categorization you do industry. Whatever is left, that is service. Becomes practical, right? Somebody asks you what is service? Something that is not agriculture, not industry is service. So it becomes more practical, right? Under this definition, services include activities as diverse as engineering and driving a bus. Driving a bus is service because it is not industry, it is not agriculture. Engineering is not agriculture, it is not industry, therefore a service. So it covers a wide variety of activities. The United States definition, right? Now the next part, however, again there is a however, right? This, however, is to the United States definition, government's definition. Besides lacking a strong conceptual framework, it lacks a strong conceptual framework because there's no concept. You're just saying not industry, not agri, service. This definition fails to recognize the distinction between service industries and service occupation. What does it mean? It explains. It categorizes workers based on their company's final product rather than on actual work the employees perform. Right? For example, Toyota. So Toyota is manufacturing a car. So I'll say this is, let's say, industry. But within the company, there will be some people who are doing accounts, who are, doing something such as, I don't know, related to HR, related to admin. Are they really, can they be categorized, these accountants, these HR, or even lawyers? Let's say lawyers. Can they be said to perform jobs that are manufacturing or industry? Not really. They are doing their service occupations, right? Lawyers, accountants, HR. But still, what are they categorized as? They're categorized as industry based on the end product, right? So this is what it says. It categorizes workers based on their company's final product rather than on actual work the employees perform. So lawyer working in Toyota is categorized as industry. Thus, the many service workers employed by manufacturers, bookkeepers or janitors are, again, you would imagine, are service people, would fall under the industrial rather than services category. This is what it is saying. So this is the problem with the United States government's definition. Such ambiguities reveal the arbitrariness of this definition. Arbitrariness would mean there's no real conceptual framework, right? Arbitrary इसलिए है because you're just categorizing everything as service that is not industry or agriculture. And suggests that although practical for government purposes, it is practical, it was said earlier, easy to use. It does not accurately reflect the composition of the current United States economy. It does not accurately reflect because it is categorizing lawyers and accountants and HR and those who are doing service occupations as industry because the end product is a car, right? So we understand classic definition. The problem is it is difficult to sustain because it does not take care of that store wala point, right? Storing electricity, storing a code electronically. United States definition again has a problem. It is practical, but does not accurately reflect the composition of the economy, right? So in comparing the United States government's definition of services with the classical definition, the author suggests that the classical definition is one. So what is classical definition? Remember, classical definition was difficult to sustain, right? This is the phrase that was used, difficult to sustain. We remember this, right? More pragmatic was the United States one, not the classical one. A is out. More difficult to apply looks good. Difficult to sustain. We can't apply it to programming, software, or electricity because we are able to store them, although they are service. So B is a very good option. C, less ambiguous. Less ambiguous? We don't know if it is less ambiguous or more ambiguous, right? We just know that it is difficult to sustain. So C is out. More widely used, again, we don't know whether it is more widely used or United States one is more widely used. We don't know that from the passage. So D is out. Option B is correct. All right. Now, before we move on, okay, there's one more question on this passage. Let's do that one, and then I can just very quickly give you one of you asked for question number 6, option C, I think. I'll just give the answer for that. But uh, first, let's do this other question on this passage. The passage suggests which of the following about service workers in the United States? About service workers. Remember, we did that Toyota example. Toyota is making cars. So the lawyers working in Toyota, the HR people, the janitors, they are all categorized as industry and not service. And therefore, the author said that this definition does not really accurately reflect the composition of the American economy, right? So the service workers working in manufacturing will be categorized as industry and not service. And in that light, let's look at the options. The number of service workers may be underestimated by the definition of services used by the government. Looks very good. Maybe underestimated. Why maybe underestimated? Because these HR people, lawyers working in manufacturing will be considered uh, as industry and not service. So there will be an underestimate. So these many, let's say 100 lawyers working in manufacturing, they are considered industry, right? They're considered industry. They're considered industry. They're not considered service, right? So it will result in an underestimation, right? B, there are fewer service workers than agricultural workers before 1988. No such information is given in the passage. B is out. The number of service workers was almost equal to the numbers employed in manufacturing until 1988. No such information is given. C is out. Most service workers are employed in service occupations rather than in service industries. Do we know this from the passage? We don't know. But it may result in an underestimate if we are treating those HR, lawyers, service occupation people as industry. So option A is correct. Okay, but let's very quickly go to the 6th one. And option C here said this, and we will have to maybe go back to this part. Just look at this. Boasted of approximately 165,000 members. Now, the author is not saying that that number was an exaggeration. And then it says it represented an increase of about 75,000 since 1926. Even that information is not shown to be an exaggeration. All the author says that these numbers come from 5 unions only. So it does not reflect a widespread adoption of 40-hour work week, right? So neither 165,000, that figure is shown to be an exaggeration, nor this increase is shown to be an exaggeration. Therefore, option C, that it exaggerates the extent of the increase, is incorrect. But now, let's go to the last of the lot. Again, this is slightly a longer one, but the good thing is you have these 2 paragraphs on the same slide. Just go through it, and the returns are also good because you are solving 2 questions based on the passage. So even though you have to read 2 paragraphs, you'll be solving 2 questions on this. So ROI is fine enough. So read this, and we'll solve the 2 questions following this passage. Okay. So we can go to the question. Can we go to the question slide? You attempt this, and then we'll discuss the passage once, and then we'll answer the questions. Okay. You attempt first on your own. And then you can attempt the other question also on this one. 1 second. And then this question, which is the 10th one. According to the passage, Tucci and Talaga found that service guarantees, when offered by lower priced restaurants, can have which of the following effects? So you answer this one, and then we discuss the entire thing. Okay. So now I think we should just discuss the passage first, and then we can solve these questions. Okay. First, the passage. So 2 paragraphs, we'll just focus on the ideas, the big ideas in the 2 paragraphs, and then we'll move on to the question. So paragraph 1, in their study of whether offering a guarantee of service quality will encourage customers to visit a particular restaurant, offering a guarantee that we guarantee this service. If you don't get it, we'll give you back your money, something like that. Tucci and Talaga have found that the effect of such guarantees is mixed. It is mixed, right? It depends on some factors. For higher priced restaurants, there is some evidence, not enough, but there is some evidence that offering a guarantee increases the likelihood of customer selection, right? So if I'm going to a 5-star restaurant, right, priced restaurant, right? If some restaurant is offering me a guarantee of service, right? If I don't get that service, they'll give my money back. In a high priced restaurant, I might just select that restaurant over a restaurant that is not offering such a guarantee. So in high priced restaurant, it works a certain way, probably reflecting the greater financial commitment involved in choosing an expensive restaurant. Greater financial commitment would mean, of course, there'll be a bigger sort of bill that will come in a higher price restaurant, right? So since it involves greater financial commitment, right? I might just go for a restaurant wherein they are providing this guarantee. So this is true for higher price restaurant, right? This is important. For lower price restaurant, it works in the opposite way. where one expects less assiduous service. Less assiduous means they're not that, they're not laboring that hard to make you feel special. It is a lower priced restaurant. You understand what's your expectations are, entering a lower priced restaurant, your expectations are not that high. Tucci and Talaga found that a guarantee could actually have a negative effect. In higher priced restaurants, it works a certain way. It might just help, it might just increase the likelihood of customer selection. But a lower priced restaurant, it works in the opposite way, could actually have a negative effect. A potential customer might think that a restaurant offering a guarantee is worried about its service. Moreover, since customers understand a restaurant's product and know what to anticipate in terms of service, they are empowered to question its quality. So in a lower priced restaurant, if they are saying we offer you a guarantee of service, you are looking with suspicion. You will question their quality. कि आपको guarantee देनी पड़ रही है. You are not confident of your service in a lower price restaurant. This is not generally true in case of skilled activities such as electric work, right? In an electric work, you will want that guarantee, right? Somebody comes to fix your air condition AC. They'll say there is a guarantee of 6 months. You'll absolutely go with that option, right? Somebody who's giving you a guarantee. But in a restaurant, in a lower price restaurant, somebody giving a guarantee can work in their, can go in the opposite direction for that restaurant. People might just question their quality, that they have to give a guarantee. Maybe their quality is not good, right? Now, for rest, because the discussion is concerning restaurants, right? Restaurants, generally, the main benefit of a service guarantee probably lies not so much in customer appeal, not so much in attracting customers, as in managing and motivating staff. Staff members would know what service standards are expected of them, also know that the success of the business relies on their adhering to those standards, right? So that guarantee, right, service guarantee, it may not help in attracting a lot of customers, especially for a lower price restaurants, but it can have an internal impact. So if you are saying, if you are telling your staff, you are a restaurant owner, you are telling your staff, there's a service guarantee that we are giving to the customer, right? And this is what they expect, and this is what we have to deliver. Now they have a ready sort of checklist that you have to do this, you will have to politely answer their questions, you will have to be around them to answer any doubt, whatever. So you have a checklist, and then they are motivated to behave in that way, right? So that service guarantee may not be a good sort of tactic to attract customers, but then it can motivate staff. This is what the passage is. Additionally, guarantees provide some basis for defining the skills needed for the successful service in areas traditionally regarded as unskilled, such as waiting tables. So, waiting tables, there are waiters, right, waiting the tables, and they don't really know, how to conduct themselves. This is really unskilled, right? You're just taking orders according to the passage. It doesn't require so much of a skill. But still, if you are guaranteeing, if you are offering a service guarantee, you can tell them that you have to be around, you have to answer politely, you have to ask for some things, right? If you give them a checklist, it will standardize that service, right? Which is considered unskilled, it will standardize it. So, net, what the passage is telling us, it may not help a lower priced restaurant, these service guarantees, in attracting customers. It may go in the opposite direction. People will start suspecting their service. In a higher priced restaurant, it might just work. But more importantly, these service guarantees will have an impact internally. It will motivate the staff to behave in a certain way, and not so much external, not so much in attracting new customers. This is what the passage is, right? Now, it can be inferred. it can be inferred that the author of the passage would agree with which of the following statements about the appeal of service guarantees to customers. Right? We understand in a lower price restaurant, not so much of an appeal. Right? A says such guarantees are likely to be somewhat more appealing to customers of restaurants than to customers of other businesses. No, this is not what the author is saying. In fact, in electrical works, it might just appeal to the customers. It might just increase the customer base, not in restaurants, right? So likely to somewhat more appealing in case of restaurants, that looks like an opposite option. A is out. B, such guarantees are likely to be more appealing to customers who know what to anticipate in terms of service. Again, this is opposite. Where do customers know what to anticipate? This was said in regard to lower priced restaurants. They know what to anticipate. So there the guarantees won't work. It will impact in the other way, right? People will start suspecting your service, right? So B is out. It won't be more appealing. It won't make that restaurant more appealing, but rather it can have an adverse effect. So B is out. See, such guarantees are likely to have less appeal in situations where customers are knowledgeable about a business, product, or service. That's correct. Less appeal in situations where customers are already know what to expect. This is again lower price restaurant. So if you look at B and C, they are opposites of each other. B is saying it is more likely to work where people know what to expect. C says it is less likely to work, or it will have less appeal where people know what to expect, right? So C is correct. This is what is being said in the first paragraph. D, in situations where a high level of financial commitment is involved, a service guarantee is not likely to be very appealing. In fact, it is likely to be more appealing in case of high price restaurants. So D could have been eliminated quite easily. Option C is correct here. I think some of you actually answered. I didn't C as the answer on this one, the 9th one. And that takes us to the last question of the day, which is the 10th one, again based on the same passage. According to the passage, Tucci and Talaga found that service guarantees offered by lower priced restaurants can have which of the following effects, right? It may be counterproductive. That's the word, right? It may just make the audience, make the customers more suspicious of the service being offered, right? A says customers developing unreasonably high expectations regarding service. No, they'll start suspecting your service, right? So A is out. Customers avoiding such restaurants because they fear that the service guarantee may not be fully honored. Now, if you look at this closely, this is not really discussed. Do they fear that the service guarantee may not be fully honored? No, they fear that the quality of service is not good. That's what they fear. So B is out. C, customers interpreting the service guarantee as a sign that management is not confident about the quality of service, right? It will go in the opposite direction. C is correct. D, a restaurant's becoming concerned that its service will not be assiduous enough to satisfy customers. It's not a comment on how the restaurant will become concerned. It's a comment on how the audience, how the customer will react to it or respond to it. So D is also something not discussed. D is out. D is out. So option C is correct here. So even in the previous one, I think C was the answer. Yeah. In both these questions, C is the answer. All right. So these were, if you weren't able to answer all the questions in this set of questions, that's all right, because I especially picked up these questions that are either tricky or they're more difficult. But, I want to say this towards the end, that if you're getting an inference answer incorrect, the chances are high that you haven't really gotten the passage, right? So I say this usually, don't blame the question. Don't say assumption questions I get wrong, or inference questions I get wrong, or central idea questions I get wrong, the chances are high that the problem lies in reading and comprehension. So it becomes very important to answer any question type, uh, and this spans sections: legal, logical, English. It's very important to exactly get the message that's there in the passage. So if you are facing troubles in inference, in assumption, in central idea, trust me, the problem is very likely to be with reading comprehension. So read more, right? And as you are approaching CLAT, right, it becomes really important that we don't lose sight of the big picture. We don't get overly obsessed with just solving mocks and questions. That's important. But we are also doing the reading part. We are still reading the editorials. We are still excited about opening the newspaper and reading the editorials. That part is very, very, very important, right? Even if you are solving less, right? If you're not, let's say you're solving just one mock a week, but you're spending time reading, right? That would be a more sort of fruitful, that would be more fruitful than, not reading at all and solving 2 to 3 mocks every week, right? So yeah, that's what I wanted to highlight towards the end, and we'll continue with these sessions. As I had said earlier, we will look separately at central idea questions and primary purpose questions and some other types. Okay, you can let us know in the chat, in the comments also, so that we understand the requirements and accordingly we do these videos. But yes, do visit some of the questions that you weren't able to solve the first time, right? And let us know your thoughts in the comments, right? I'll see you soon in the next YT session very soon.